Magic is found in every room, where people connect over a shared purpose. Luke, Hannah and Chris explore the role of purpose, courage, mindset and culture in every leader's quest for transformational performance.
Hello and welcome to Magic in the Room. I am Luke Freeman.
And I'm Hannah Broderud.
And I'm Chris Province, and we're coming to you live from our Purpose and Performance Group studios here in Bixby,
Well,
USA.
Not live. We're recording.
We're live today.
We are actually physically in this room
live.
at the same time.
All together
live.
at the same
It's
time.
not a virtual
Right.
recording. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I'm tracking.
Thanks, Dad. All right. So pretty excited today for the conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about activity versus impact. And
Good one.
boy, I know a lot of people, and us included, we do a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in our day-to-day, there's there's just certain things we have to do.
Yeah.
Right. The administrative type functions. Maybe it's getting the dry cleaning, taking the kids where they need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly all worthwhile and responsible,
Mm-hmm.
but not always the most impactful things that
Mhm.
we can do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd love to, and I think we see it a lot in organizations and with particular leaders. There's a lot of activity happening somewhere, but not a lot of progress.
Mm-hmm.
So let's diagnose that a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, where does that tend to show up, or how does that become the case?
We're going to have to break that down a little bit.
I think there's a few different places where that tends to show up. One is in compliance heavy roles. And
Mhm.
I don't mean compliance necessarily only in like the world of compliance, but I'll say job tasks that require a level of compliant activity.
Mhm.
So you have to have the right documentation, you have to have the right permissions, you have to have the right, um, paperwork. Maybe there's some level of bureaucracy associated that you're having to meet their standards. And I think in those settings, when a large part of the workload is that, you can get really good at processing those things. Um, and it's not a part of your day to day work habit to think about the why or how has the environment changed or whatever else. Because to you, the environment that you are doing work or doing business within is this set of regulations. And when the regulations change, you change your process. And I think especially when your revenue is associated with something that has regulatory compliance work, like you become very focused on adjusting to the regulatory environment, and it becomes less of your normal rhythms, cadence, whatever, to question like, should we be doing this at all?
Mm-hmm.
Or how should we change our primary service or product or whatever it happens to be? So that's one example, I think.
I think another example of when it happens is, we're to some extent, we're creatures of comfort, creatures of habit. Our brains are wired to automate behavior and to maintain homeostasis. It's good for an organism to be in homeostasis, and change is disruptive. And so we are hardwired to want to fear or avoid change that we didn't choose. And so when it feels like there's pain, discomfort, uncertainty, any of those things, our brains are hardwired to avoid. Some of us are more risk averse and more like less change averse than others, I think, by nature. But we're all going to resist certain types of change because it's costly. It's energy, there's an energy cost, there's a continuity cost. And I think for some of us, in different, and I think different people do it in different ways in different contexts.
Hmm.
We want to keep things the same so there's not disruption. And in order to keep something the same, you have to kind of automate it and set it. This is how we do it. And so we check the boxes, and then that becomes the environment. Like, don't stir the pot, don't create waves. Let's just not do anything that could upset the apple cart, because then we don't know what the outcome might be. So the environment or the system perpetuates this. Let's just check the boxes so we're not creating waves.
Yeah. I do think there's another category here, where the decision makers are far enough away from what the business actually does
Mm.
that they don't have any insight to bring to bear on what the right activity should be.
Mhm.
So I see this pretty often, like in nonprofit world. There are lots of volunteer boards out there who they care maybe about their community, they care about the work that this organization's doing, or they kind of care about the status of being on a board. So they come and they show up once a month or once every couple months and they vote on a consent agenda and they look at the financials and say, yeah, it looks okay. But they don't really know about the work that that
Mhm.
organization's doing. Like
Mhm.
they couldn't go and log into one of the computers of that business, right? Or go
Mhm.
show up at a function of that business and actually execute. They don't know enough. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, those folks can't drive strategy. You can't drive strategy if you don't know the market, if you don't know the service, if you don't know the competitive set. And so sometimes I do see that gap. And then it's basically all dependent on staff.
Mhm.
And if the staff aren't driving strategy, then, you
Or
get in
at
a
least
situation where,
don't have connection, like real meaningful connection with the strategy and
right,
full understanding of where we're
right.
going and why.
Right. Yeah, so there's this structural thing that
Mhm.
happens where you've got staff that thinks their job's to do the work,
Mhm.
and then and they think the board's job is to set strategy, and then you've got a board that doesn't even know the market or know the service, and so they can't effectively set strategy.
Mm.
So you've kind of got fingers pointing at each other. And I've seen that enough times to say that's another scenario where I think this happens.
I
Yeah.
think there's
Right.
maybe a fourth scenario,
Hmm.
and that is in an organization where there's a CYA culture, and that culture comes from fear.
Yeah.
And in a culture like that, it goes back to the safety thing that I was kind of related to the safety thing I talked about earlier, but
Hmm.
the origin of it is different. It's, I'm going to check the boxes so that I don't get in trouble,
Hmm.
and I'm going to throw anyone under the bus so that I don't get in trouble,
Hmm.
because there's not enough psychological safety in the organization for people to fully own outcomes and impact and the consequences of those, of having them or the lack of them.
Yeah. So I hear you saying, there's systems or organizations in which your people are actively disincentivized
Yes.
to think strategically or think
Mhm.
about, are we doing the right
Mhm.
thing? And there comes real risk if
Yeah.
they don't focus on activity
Yeah.
instead of outcomes.
Yeah.
Well, I think what this has been an awesome exercise in is kind of the power of good questions versus easy answers.
Hmm.
And I think we've identified here like 4 buckets. I'm going to throw another one out there, like where high activity may exist with low impact. Just kind of summarize where we've been at organizations or environments of like high compliance
Hmm.
functions and
Mhm.
that tactical execution. which is a lot of times required for certain organizations.
Mm-hmm.
When there's a high value for the status quo,
Mhm.
when there's not a particular entity or executive office driving and setting strategy. And Hannah, you mentioned CYA culture. I would expand that to a below the line culture
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
where like accountability is elusive.
Mhm.
And it's not just CYA, but it's also blame game and
Mhm.
denial. And
Mhm.
that's the kind of what we go about doing every day. But I'm going to throw another one at you, which is also high activity, low impact in these firefighting cultures where the system that they are operating under or the structures they have in place just
Mm.
tend to produce a lot of problems.
Yeah.
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 And there's not a step back to say, hey, how do we structurally address this issue? And maybe it's an outcrop, Hannah, of what you're saying. Like when you see all those CYA, blame game, denial,
Mhm.
like the structure of that organization is producing a lot of problems
Mhm.
that
Mm-hmm.
then produces that behavior.
Right.
So what you're seeing is a symptom of something deeper organizationally.
Yes, because every system is perfectly designed to produce the outcomes that it produces.
Yeah.
So if those are the outcomes we're seeing, that means the system is set up to create those
Yeah.
outcomes.
Well, I'll go a step further and say there are cultures that value firefighting more than they value long-term planning.
Well, they
Mm.
give us heroes,
Yes.
right? There's no
That's what I'm
hero
saying.
in like setting a strategy and resourcing a strategy
Mm-hmm.
where there is no chaos and then
Right.
being wildly successful.
Mm-hmm.
That puts no one on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like the team enjoys that win.
Right.
But in cultures where you have hero mindset, typically it's the person that, can set the order of operations and work the fastest with the best relationships.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's who gets pedestaled.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a bit like this, so I'll be vulnerable, but I think we see lots of folks that are like this. If there's not an opportunity to jump in and be the hero and save the day, like it can get a little depressing. Like,
Mhm.
oh, you mean I'm just showing up and being effective and we're getting all of our work done?
That's boring.
That's kind of, oh, what am I supposed,
Mhm.
it is more exciting sometimes to say, oh, we've got this big project and this problem that the client hasn't been able to solve, and we're going to swoop in and help them solve it. And that is exciting. But if that becomes the high you're always chasing,
Mhm.
I mean, that doesn't lead to long-term sustainability, wealth creation, whatever else
Well,
your
I
goals
think
are.
just like there are some personal relationships where the dynamics are such that the relationship thrives on the drama
Mm-hmm.
of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I think organizations can operate that way too.
Yeah.
The organization thrives on the drama,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody says that they want drama, and yet they can't seem to stay away from drama
Yeah.
because it's the only way that you feel engaged in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily the most helpful or always or healthy way to operate.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how do we get out of that?
Yeah. I went ahead and outed myself so you all wouldn't have to.
You're on an island there, bro.
Mhm.
Well, okay. So a little bit of multiple choice here. The path to impact is paved with intention, curiosity, commitment, agency,
Mm.
like arriving at or being a leader of impact, or maybe being a community of impact or an organization that's impactful. What are those hallmarks?
Mm.
Are any of the things like I just kind of threw at you primary?
I think what rises to the surface, I don't know if it is the primary, but we talked on a previous episode about agency and the importance of agency, because there's a certain level of if there's not agency, there's apathy or cynicism or at the extreme nihilism. And that can create this environment where, well, I'm just going to clock in and do the minimum and check the boxes so that I don't get fired. So I'm going to figure out how to play the system with the minimum amount of effort because I don't have any sense of psychological ownership, of psychological safety, of agency, meaning the power to feel like I can make a difference in the system.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that is definitely an element of it.
Yeah. Okay. So what creates impact? My answer is clear vision and the ability to identify the assumptions that are driving your work. So if I know if I have a clear vision about how I want our life tomorrow to be better than our life today, and then I have kind of the discipline or the time or the resources to identify the assumptions driving our work today and question those assumptions and say, well, what if? Is there a world where this other thing could help us achieve that vision better? You combine clear vision and the ability to really focus on assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that creates impact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I would say I'm going to ride along with you a little bit differently in to say that when you talk about questioning assumptions, to me that is being curious.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, is the world that I have created for myself to live in exactly how I want it to be?
Mm.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I think it's being curious, but it's also a discipline because checking assumptions is also like doing waste reduction initiatives, right? Right now, we assume that the best way to create this product is it goes through these 20 steps. Is there a world where it could be 18 steps and we could do it 20% faster? Like that's a disciplined
or
way
could it
to
be
check our
or could it be
assumptions.
29 steps and get us a 30% price gain,
Sure.
right?
Right. Right.
Either way.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think that's two ways to look at the same idea. Like curiosity is the trait,
Mhm.
one of the traits. Discipline I think is another trait. But that curiosity, you combine that with a really clear vision of where you want to go, and then kind of a not afraid to mess with all the sacred cows-ness
Mhm.
of curiosity. Like that's a pretty good recipe.
Yeah. So I think in there you see those themes, right? Intention, vision,
Yeah.
commitment to do the actual work, to turn the
Mhm.
screws, to lift the
Mhm.
load.
Yeah.
But for impact, we have to be clear on the why. So purpose becomes incredibly important if we're going to have impact.
Yeah.
Because if we don't know, and we can call it a goal or a vision, but there has to be a clear answer to why are we doing this in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah.
And perhaps it's this idea that from a model standpoint, it might seem a little bit linear, but the answers are um, almost infinite. In this idea of like we have a stated purpose, like that primary intention and sole focus, and all the activities of activation. Like we do all these things to activate that purpose. And if we do it well,
Mhm.
impact exists. And it's through, how do we reflect on what impacts we're having? Like, when do you all do that? How do you like build that into your existence? Say, well, here's why I get out of bed every day. I live every day in an effort to activate that intention, that purpose. How do you measure the impact you're having, or how do you uh, evaluate, like, is the life you've created for yourself the one that you want to be living?
I think for me personally, are you asking?
Yeah, you.
Yeah. I am living the life I want to be living, and there's more. So I read a statement you put on our whiteboard earlier today. Can you recall it?
The paradox.
Yeah, the
Yes,
paradox.
the paradox.
Yeah. What I'm doing today
Mm-hmm.
is the path to what I want to be doing.
Yes.
And what I'm doing today is the only thing stopping me
There
from
you
what
go.
I want to be doing.
Yeah. I thank you for clarifying the wording. But that struck me as really true, right?
Mhm.
And I think what I'm doing today is what I want to be doing, and it is the path to more of what I want to be doing. And also, what I'm doing today is the roadblock to what I want to be doing and the kind of life I want to live.
Mhm.
It is a paradox, and and I think it's helpful to think about it. It's a both and. So
Mhm.
what do I need to, a good friend of mine, Karen Lum, who you guys know, she's been on the podcast, but she often asks this question. She leads a kind of a monthly intention setting for a group of us. And the question is always, how do I want to feel this month? How do I want to feel this month? Like, not what do I want to produce this month? How
Mhm.
do I want to feel this month? Okay, so get clear on that. One word. What do I need to do more of? And what do I need to do less of to get to that? And to me, that becomes a really helpful way to think about, right? What is the impact I'm creating for myself, but how I feel about the work I'm doing, about the pace of my days, about the structure that I'm operating within, how I feel about that impacts the people in my life, whether it's my family or my team. So I think as leaders, like being intentional about how do I want to feel at the end of the day or at the end of the month? And what do I need to do? And maybe what do I need to learn to be able to get closer to that?
Well, that's a pretty good answer.
Yeah, right.
When you ask the question, the image that came to mind for me is like a stone going into a lake and the ripples going out. And I think for me, how do I know I'm having impact, or how do I measure the impact of my life? I want those ripples to be qualitatively positive, and I want them to be as big and go as far as they can. And, if everyone knows this image, right, of a rock going into a lake. If you can kind of visualize it, the ripples closest to the rock are like the most intense.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And so I for me, success is the people closest to me see who I am, feel cared for and loved, are better off in life than they would have been without me.
Mm.
But then that continues out, right? As the ripples decrease, there's also like a quantitative, how far do the ripples go? How wide is that area that you're covering? And like that matters to me as well. I exist in this ecosystem of this lake or whatever in this metaphor. And I want to have impact on as much of that as possible. And I want it to be a positive impact and want to leave the world better than I found it. And so, for me, a lot of this is intuitive. I don't have quantitative things that I'm tracking,
Mm-hmm.
but I think I know I have a pretty good sense, I believe, about where I'm at relationally with my family, where I'm at
Mm-hmm.
relationally with the people that I work with every
Mm-hmm.
day, where I'm at relationally with my community or boards that I serve on, or whatever else, where I am relationally with client partners
Mm-hmm.
and the people that I work with in that context. And so, yeah, if those are qualitatively positive and the wider I can move that out,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's my measure.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Like the bigger the rock is, the more the ripples are,
Mhm.
right? So my only leverage here is myself. And I wish it was just the bigger I was, the more impact I'd have. That would be super easy. I'm
Pizza,
like,
bring on the
eat
pizza.
some taco bueno every day, you know? But no, I think of that as like, what's the gravity that I hold? How
Mhm.
effective am I in it? How effective am I at communicating? How effective am I at um, showing care for people? How much resource have I created that I can redistribute and give?
Mhm.
And also, how healthy am I? I mean, a lot of it comes down to that, like physically, emotionally, spiritually. If I'm have larger gravity, larger mass as a person around not just charisma when I walk in a room. I'm not super charismatic, but
Amen to that.
I know. But my ability to move the room,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? My ability to move the room from something good to something better, or
Mhm.
from something bad to something a little bit less bad,
Mhm.
right? Like that's gravity, and that's my lever, and like that's the only place I can focus if I want to get impact.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you start thinking about like that executive presence. And what can cap out some number of leaders is, can they move a room? I think there's one
Mhm.
thing to say, can you message to a room? Can you motivate a room? Can you control a room? Right? Can you facilitate a direction? But can you move a mass of people in the direction of your intent?
Mhm.
And I don't know that there's a stronger statement for exactly what executive presence or executive agency looks like.
Mhm.
A couple of things that speak to where both of you all have been, but I really like that idea of, hey, like where I'm at, where I enter this situation, the most intensity should be closest to me.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And the more gravity I have, the stronger the ripples are to my extended network,
Yeah.
right? Or people outside of my inner circle. But this point that you made, I think that's exceptionally strong is I have the most intensity with the people that are closest to me.
Yeah.
And that's where the strength lies.
Mhm.
I think there's another dynamic there where for, you know, a lot of times it's simpler for leaders, specific archetypes to say, I'm going to spend all my time focused outside of that inner circle because my inner circle is a given. My inner circle will be there. That's why we made the contracts that we've made,
Mhm.
Mhm.
whether that's kids, spouses, business partners, like these things where they're kind of contracted in, a marriage certificate, whatever. But I find it striking, like that visual to say, okay, the people closest to me should experience the me the most intensely,
Mhm.
and I should have the highest impact on their lives. And the more I grow my skill set and my ability, and specific for resource creation, providing a value, like that will allow me to reach out, but not lose the intensity of those that are closest to me.
Well, you can cover up a lot of hickeys once you go a few ripples out,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? Like if you're like, I can public speak pretty well,
Hmm.
right? And I can show up in a room of people I haven't met before and
Hmm.
be pretty effective at moving the room. But I could do that and have a lot of blind spots, a lot of black marks, whatever with the people closest to me. And we all do to some degree. The people very closest know all the things.
Mhm.
But I think for me, there's one of my values is that the folks closest to me believe in my intent and value as much as those people that I would show up in a room that don't know me personally. Yeah, that there's congruence there.
Hmm.
Because when I hear what you're saying about the people saying, well, those people are a given, I think the folks that believe that also sometimes the folks in their inner circle are like, yeah, I don't really want to, he's gone today. Great.
Hmm.
Right. Or, yeah, go let him do that thing. Or, we have a meeting with so and so. Like, that's the last thing I want. And to
Hmm.
me, like, that's a qualitative indicator of success. If I can authentically have a similar quality of impact with those closest to me as out, Like that congruence matters.
Yeah. I just think that's a great visual about how you have more, like you have a wider span out
Mhm.
past your inner circle.
Mhm.
Um, and you can cover up things out there that are very noticeable and real and are revealed
Yeah.
to your inner circle, especially, all the problems,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
not that anybody has those,
No,
right?
No.
no,
No,
of
I
course not.
Yeah.
sure don't.
Yeah.
But it is those in our inner circle are closest to us, so they also care the most, and we care the most, which means, and they're also the most attuned to the flaws and the gaps because they are the ones who experience them and where that impact is the most. So they're almost looking for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which makes it challenging, but they're also the ones that care the most. So they're the most invested in this working
Yeah.
and like feeling meaningful.
Yeah. Well, and shouldn't they be looking
Mhm.
for the flaws,
Mhm.
right? I think about the three of us, and even as we're here all together in Tulsa together, like I'm more effective with you all being close and knowing my flaws and either taking away the blind spot, right? Hey, Luke, you might think about this, or at least saying, hey, tacitly or even explicitly, we're going to cover up those flaws
Or we're
and
going to
be
cover
stronger together.
for that. Yeah.
Right.
Cover
Yeah.
for each other, cover
Yeah.
each other's blind spots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that idea, and we'll start to wrap, but this idea that impact is knowing like what game you're playing.
Mm.
And if you know what game you're playing, what the rules of that game are, it's knowing your strengths. To say, for me to play my best game, for me to show up to the best of my ability, I have to know your best game.
Mm-hmm.
I have to know Hannah's best game. And I have to know how I need to show up as part of this team in order to make us as effective as possible. I can't show up as the same player every day. Um, that's the whole idea of the Russell rules and Bill Russell being the best point guard, the best forward, the best power forward. He was the best at every position on the team. But if he knew the skills of the other four guys on the floor, he knew the role that he had to play.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think there's a flexibility that goes along with impact to what you're saying. And it's how I fit into the operating structure that I'm charged to contribute to.
Mhm.
Well, I think one of the things you said there is just know what game you're playing. And when I think
Yeah.
back to all the scenarios we started with, like that's the antidote. If you're in a compliance heavy organization, if you're in some sort of organization where neither the staff nor the board understand their role in directing strategy, when you're someplace where there's a lot of fear,
Mhm.
right? Knowing what game you're playing gives you power in all those scenarios. Like learn the game you're playing. You have to know your business model, you have to know your market, you have to know what your differentiation is as an organization. Like you uncover those things and pull thread on those. It gives you a lot of power then to navigate any of those situations. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think that kind of brings us full circle. So as we kind of exit this space today, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Knowing the game you're playing and what the end goal of that game is, which you could also call what is the purpose? Why are we here? I think that is key. Not surprising. It's a theme that we talk about a lot, but knowing that I have impact means I need to know first, need to be clear on what impact I want to be making.
yeah. My takeaway, I'm sorry to layer on another metaphor, but I think about the things in the universe that have the most mass, like a black hole,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they exist and they suck in everything that gets inside their orbit. And like my takeaway is like, that's a great strategy. If you want to have impact as an organization, as an organizational leader, as an individual, like your impact is amplified by all the mass and all the gravity that you can aggregate to yourself. So I think about the three of us sitting here, we each are influential on our own, but you put our mass together and the gravity grows exponentially.
Yeah.
And I think that goes for our wider team and a healthy functioning family, whatever that is. Like let's combine mass and have more gravity.
Yeah. And so certainly in that, and I'll kind of with this takeaway, in defining that gravity, in creating that, all those things show back up, that curiosity, the agency, the intention, the commitment, the intensity. But I'd love to let's dig into that next time. Let's
Yeah.
talk about how we define gravity and whether that's creation of resource and, does resilience come before resource or after? Would love to spin on that a little bit more, but I think we really struck on something here with this idea of how do we create gravity for ourselves, intensity for the people within our circle, and ultimately become better leaders as a result. So thank you all for the conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll read us out. Magic in the Room is hosted by Chris Province, Hannah Broderud, and me, Luke Freeman. It's produced by Ethan Babylon of Babylon Productions. Social media management is by Emma Holland and Maggie King Robinson. Our theme music is by Evan Grimm. You can find his music on Apple Music. This episode was recorded at the Magic in the Room podcast studio in Bixby, USA. Yeah, recorded live. Magic in the Room is a production of Purpose and Performance Group. You can find us at purposeandperformancegroup.com. You can also find this episode and all the previous episodes at magicintheroom.com. We'll see you soon.